listening to DAHSmash podcast with your hosts, two guys you've never heard of. And now, the self-proclaimed encyclopedia of wrestling, Johnny O. And the biggest mark for Marty Jannetty, Metal Ed.
Welcome everyone to Double X Handle Smash Podcast. I'm Metal Ed.
I'm Johnny O.
And this is our premiere episode. Thank you all for tuning in wherever you're tuning in from. Man, fresh off the heels of the Dark Side of the Ring episode.
Of Grizzly Smith, Jake the Snake, Rockin' Robin, and Sam Houston. And guess who we have for an interview today?
I'm going to take a guess and say Sam Houston.
Yes, sir.
But before we get to the interview,
let's talk about ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, like you like to do. We're two guys you never heard of. That's first and foremost. But we're both wrestling fans. And we both wanted to delve deeper into our childhoods and, our fandom of wrestling and talk to some of the people we grew up watching. So we've got a plethora of stars lined up for you guys. Hear their stories, tell their tales.
So when you were younger, what made you love professional wrestling?
Well, that's actually quite easy. See, I turned on Saturday Morning Superstars one morning. And it was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And I don't know why, but I was cheering for him. I think he was taking on maybe Barry Horowitz or Jim Powers or Hans Patel, right? And I'm just I'm rooting for the $1 Million Man, not knowing he's a bad guy. And a couple weeks later, this was 1989, a couple weeks later, I see the banner for WrestleMania 5. And I'm just like, oh, cool. And then I saw the tag team, the Rockers, Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels. They both reminded me of my brother and his friends. My brother was an 80s guy. So it got me hooked, and I kept watching. I started following tag teams like the Hart Foundation. I was at one point just a wrestling, like they call him Mark, because I believed everything was real. I was 8. But eventually I grew out of it. I was able to see wrestlers that had talent versus wrestlers who did not have talent, gimmick wrestlers, we say. And I recognize some of the gimmicks for what they were, and I also appreciate some of them. Like, guys get on the Ultimate Warrior, but man, that guy brought energy. He brought passion. He made you believe in something, Like his speech said, it runs deeper than just wrestling. It's a bond between a fan and what they're being presented. So, 1989, 8 years old, WrestleMania 5, that's when I got hooked. What about you?
Well, sort of started a little bit before WrestleMania 5, but I always remember the beginning of WrestleMania 5 where Vince McMahon, his voice came on, and his voice carried, as everyone knows, Vince McMahon's voice is so powerful. When he was when I was little, first of all, before I tell the WrestleMania 5 thing, I remember an ad, I think, for WrestleMania 3, and welcome to WrestleMania, and that just caught me. And I didn't see WrestleMania 3 until way later, until the 90s, but I ended up WrestleMania 5 when Vince McMahon came on, and it was like, the Mega Powers explode, and it was just, I don't know, it's something about his voice, it drew me to it. And I remember my first memory of watching wrestling was when the Mega Powers were forming, and I think Honky Tonk Man and I think it was Greg Valentine were beating up on Macho Man, and Miss Elizabeth went backstage to go and find Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan came out, and then I was in love with Hulk Hogan, man.
I remember that. I didn't actually quite understand what was going on at the time. I saw the Saturday night's main event where they exploded. Mm-hmm. Where he's telling Hogan, you got lust in your eyes, and he slapped him upside his face and set up the Mega Powers explode.
And when I was younger, my brother used to have these wrestling trading cards. And my brother hated wrestling, but for some reason, we used to watch the Saturday morning cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. And he had these cards, trading cards, and Iron Sheik and Roddy Piper and Big John Studd. And we used to, walk around the house, saying, Mom likes Big John Studd. She thinks he's a stud. And for some reason, I don't know, well, that was funny to me back then. But so I didn't really know who these people were, but I heard these names, and the Junkyard Dog and Coco Beware later on, and all these colorful characters. I remember also another ad, Showcase of the Immortals, and I wanted to be I wanted to be wherever they were because that just drew me right to it. And Hulk Hogan was my favorite. And yeah, so that's me. I mean, going now, I went to wrestling school, and when I was about 20 years old, that was about 20 years ago. And
We're old.
Yeah, we're older than dirt.
I mean, we're not that old, but we're getting up there. You know, it's funny because I actually didn't go to a wrestling school, but I went and did what they called side yarding. You know what they call side yarding?
Is that called backyard wrestling?
Yeah, backyard wrestling. But there was a guy that had a ring, and of course I used the moniker Eddie Janetti.
Oh Lord!
And I went out and I had a few matches untrained, and that's when I realized that asthma is a thing that I have, and I can't do this. For one, for two, my brother, who also joined with me, also wasn't trained. I said, "Hey, let me do this spot like the Triple H knee from the turnbuckle." I said, "Sure, but when I get there, you got to give me a second. So woo the crowd while I stick my hand in there." And, of course, he got overzealous, and I ate a knee and lost a tooth. In my very first match and last match. Actually, it wasn't my last match. I participated in 2 battle royals, and I found out that I'm not very agile because I took a tumble over the top rope backwards and swung around and hit my knees on the side of the ring, skidding them. It was summertime, gnats, blood, fun stuff.
Early time in my wrestling fandom, I took Cactus Jack as my hero, and
I see the similarities.
Followed his career to the point where, hey, I jumped off my roof onto some mattresses, but unfortunately for me, they didn't catch my fall because I missed. And that was Mom said no more of that. But I ended up then jumping off other high places like my deck, and it was pretty high up. But I ended up doing kind of some dumb stuff to myself when I was younger, you know, blading and all the other stuff that people do, and they say not to try this on TV.
Do not try this at home, which we did anyway.
Yeah, and that's when I ended up getting barbed wire because we had cows, and I ended up wrapping it around my body and ended up jumping off my deck onto a trash can.
Oh.
And yeah, I have some scars from that.
So this is an interesting dynamic. You grew up in the country.
Oh yeah.
I'm a city boy.
It's like the country mouse meets the city mouse here.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I have similar stories, but we come from 2 distinctly different places, and they're only about 30 minutes from each other, but it's pretty funny. Anyway, you know, we had a match. We went from between the basement, the attic, and the garage, right? I remember distinctly putting 2 full-size mattresses next to each other for cushioning, and my brother gave me a pedigree. When he jumped, he split the 2 mattresses, and I saw concrete, and I said, "Oh shit, bump!" And I was dazed. I was a little dazed. If I still had the video, you can see me and my cousin looked legit pissed because we both took bumps on the cement. But of course, a couple years prior to that, I tried to tombstone my brother in the basement, and I kicked the mattress out from underneath me, and I knocked him out. I tried to roll him over for the pin, and he wasn't budging. That's our stories. But, you know, I'm interested to hear Sam Houston's story. But before we get into Sam Houston's story, let's hit him with the schedule.
We're going to do the first 2 episodes on launch day.
Which is today, Friday, the 11th of June, 2021.
Then after that, we'd like to release them every 2 weeks.
At the end of episode 2, stay tuned to find out who we have procured next. Because we've got several guys lined up to interview on our show. It's going to be a blast. We're not always going to have guests. Just get that out of the way because I don't want people to have a very high expectation. But we are going to have guests somewhat frequently.
You can join us on Twitter at DAH_Smash, and you can join us on our Facebook, Double Axe Handle Smash. You can go to our website, DAHSmash.com.
For news and reviews on when episodes drop, keep you in the loop. All that good stuff, DAHSmash.com. So, Johnny O, you ready for the Sam Houston episode?
I've been born ready. This guy was a great interview.
He was. So, ladies and gentlemen, the brother of Jake the Snake Roberts of Rockin' Robin.
And the son of Grizzly Smith.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sam Houston.
So, Sam Houston, how are you?
I am doing great, man. Every day is a blessing. You know, I'm able to help people. I spent the weekend in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I had a blast. You know, stuff happens to you every once in a while. Like I rolled out of the ring in Vegas after I hadn't been in the ring in 7 years, and Chris Christopherson stood up on the front row, stuck his finger in my face. And he said, "You're the real shit, man."
Wow.
Well, yeah. And so the other day, Enzo, he was the headliner for the autograph signing. Ted DiBiase, Mike Rotunda, myself. There was a few other people. I was kind of a last minute add-on, so nobody really knew I was going to be there. Well, a couple of years earlier, I had met Big Cass, and we discussed some issues with Cass, I guess, with leaving at WWE and stuff like that. So, but when I went up, you know, because the etiquette back in the day was when you walked in the dressing room, you shook hands with all the guys, and if you didn't know them, you introduced yourself.
Yep.
You know, that doesn't happen nowadays. Well, anyway, so I walked over to him. I said, "I'm Sam Houston," and he goes, he hollered out. He was on one side of the building, the whole crowd's on the other. He goes, "I know exactly who you are. You're the original badass." So that was that ranked up there with Chris Christopherson, you know.
Does Chris Christopherson's son still wrestle?
I don't know if Jody does or not. If he does, it'll probably be on the independent level out there in California or close. Now he did wrestle in Vegas with us a few times. I kicked his teeth out. I'm sorry, but you know, he didn't need to wear fangs to the ring. Yeah. And Chris was happy about it. Yeah, that was kind of neat.
That is neat. Wow. So, Sam, everyone knows the story of your brother, Jake the Snake Roberts. He's told his story many times. A lot of people probably aren't as familiar with you. So how would you say the difference between how Jake's relationship with your father, Grizzly Smith, compared to yours? Like, was it different?
Well, I guess, he was the firstborn, and I guess, but in 1970, when we moved from Gainesville, Texas to Louisiana, it was a middle of the night thing, and I can tell you that, getting into more of the story on that. But Jake and Jolene decided to stay in Texas with their mom. And Robin, myself, and my dad, well, then after my mom and dad split up, I was with my dad. I lived with my dad. I had no adult supervision from the time I was 13 years old on, But yeah, there was jealousy, I guess, from him towards me. My other brother, Richard told me a few years back, I went to go visit my dad in the nursing home. And he called, we were drinking and stuff, and he told me, he said, "Me and Jake always called you the chosen one." Well, I didn't choose to be anywhere. I was there. They chose not to be there. So, I think my dad and Jake had a very, I guess, maybe a distressed relationship, but I also know my dad always tried to be there. Jake was in this business, or is in this business, one of the greatest that ever stepped in the ring. And who can he credit that to? My dad.
Yep.
It's kind of like that song, "A Boy Named Sue." Yeah, my relationship with my dad was a whole lot different. I was shielded from a lot of things. I've heard claims and stuff like that. I'm not buying into it because I know, I know there was bad stuff that goes on. Everybody's got skeletons in their closet, and everybody goes through their own torment or their own hell. And everybody has to get okay with that with their creator on their own. Mm-hmm. I mean, my mom, come on. I got put in prison. My mom died 7 days right after they arrested. 7 days. Wow. I was in maximum security. I was on murderer's row. They chained me up. They took me to the chaplain's office. He said, "Your mom's dead. You can use the phone."
Oh my goodness.
Well, our condolences, man.
Yeah, we're very sorry.
Oh, that was in 2010.
Right.
And they took me back to my cell, and I dropped to my knees in my cell. Now, 5 days earlier, I tried to hang myself, and both the nooses broke.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was a sign right there.
Yeah, I hit the feet. My feet were bruised for weeks. I only jumped from about 4.5, 5 feet in the air. And I hit the ground with such force. Both the nooses broke. They didn't tear. They didn't rip. They broke. And when I hit, my feet were bruised for weeks. I'm the guy that jumps over the top rope and lands on the floor, on a concrete floor in wrestling boots. That's a 10-foot drop, That
Yep.
was one of my things I like, because I could,
Right. So your Wikipedia page says that you were trained by your dad, Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA. Can you explain a bit how that came to be?
That's okay. The Wikipedia page is kind of wrong.
Okay.
To be honest with you, okay.
Well, how were you trained, and how did that go?
Oh, y'all gonna love this. All right. When I was born, Dad was a headliner and he was going all over the country. Well, we were on the road with Dad, So me and my sister, Robin, we lived in 21. Well, I lived in 21 places before I started first grade because there were 3 places that she didn't live. She hadn't been born yet, But we lived in 21 places before I started first grade. So I was always on the road, and I was always on the road with the guys and the wrestlers and stuff. And as I was growing up, it was kind of like Danny Hodge in the dressing room, or this or that, or Mark Totten or Jay Clayton. Come here, kid. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. And they're showing me moves, but I'm watching every night. I'm watching, because at that time, my dad was my Superman. My dad's fighting the Assassins, the Bolos, the Von Brauners, the biggest bad guys there, and he's the headline. So he was my Superman growing up. I hope that makes sense to you. And when I say my dad could whip your dad, I was serious. My dad was 7 foot tall, about 380 pounds at the time. He was amazing, but he was a big teddy bear too. But my dad could also, I saw the assassin throw a 55-gallon steel drum at him. It was on Tulsa TV or Oklahoma City TV. They had busted his cheekbone with a headbutt. He had one of them in the bear hug, and they loaded his mask, and they busted his cheekbone wide open. Well, when he dropped him, either Jody or Tom, I don't remember which one it was, they took off running out of the ring. Dad goes running after him, and Jody picked up the trash can, the 55-gallon drum, steel drum, and threw it at Dad. And my dad grabbed it around the middle and crushed it in his bear hug.
Wow.
Crushed it in his bear hug, and then did his interview and everything. And boy, the sellout business everywhere they went. But anyway, all the guys, get me in the dressing room and show me things. And I was arm dragging kids in fights when I was in first grade. I knew how to hip toss them. I knew how to do all kinds of stuff. When I was in second grade, a friend of mine down the street, he was going to Catholic high school, and they were having a wrestling camp one summer. And I'm in second grade, just coming out of second grade. So I take the 2-week camp. Well, hey, it was on a Saturday that wasn't a TV taping in Shreveport. And Bill Watts loved having amateur athletes. He loved amateur wrestlers,
Yes,
because it gives credentials, great credentials to the sport. Like I said, we had Jay Clayton, Mark Totten, we had Herb Calvert, we had George Weingroff. George Weingroff was the one that really actually trained me. He worked out with me in the ring 2 times. And that's all I ever worked out in the ring. I trained people like Scott Hall, Dallas Page. The Dallas can't recall that I worked out with him in the ring and tried to show him some stuff at the power plant. But I was the one that worked out with Charlie Norris, Dan Spivey, all these guys. I broke Action Jackson in, These are just some of the stuff, but a lot of people don't know about me. And it's okay. I'm not trying to rest on my laurels or anything. I'm trying to be a better person tomorrow than I was today. But anyway, so I go on a Saturday morning to this wrestling meet, this amateur wrestling meet, run by Coach Barrett Murphy of Catholic High School in Baton Rouge. Well, all my buddies, now my friends growing up wasn't really Alan down the street and Joe around the corner and John up at the end of the block. My friends growing up were Danny Hodge and Dick Murdoch and Sputnik Monroe, the guys in the dressing room. 'Cause I was on the road with my dad almost every night. And my big deal was, when I was like 6, 7 years old, I'd get to carry my dad's wrestling bag into the dressing room and say hello to all the boys and everything, then go sit in the stand, And if somebody needed something, they would come to me, and I'd go run get coats and stuff. And I got a great Wahoo McDaniel story on that. I'll tell you in a minute. So anyway, it was a Saturday morning. It wasn't the TV tape. And who shows up at Catholic High School with me for my first amateur wrestling, the training camp? But Danny Hodge, these are all AAU NCAA champions I'm talking about. Danny Hodge, Herb Calvert, Mark Totten, Jake Clayton, they all show up. Jim Shields. They all show up. Okay. And my dad's there. So this Coach Barrett Murphy, gosh, and he was probably about 5'9". But I think he was like an English teacher. So we're working out and I'm doing really good. And I showed a lot of progress, promise, and everything else because I'd been doing this all my life. You and your brothers and sisters get out in the yard and you're copying, what you saw the night before. So anyway, Coach Barrett Murphy said, hey, he goes, I'll let you start working out with the high school wrestling team, if you're interested. So I got to work out with the high school wrestling team because who better to help tutor some of the guys, an English teacher or an AAU champion. So there was benefit in all the way around. And those guys came to the practices with me a few times and they taught a lot of the guys some stuff. But as far as, okay, then one time after my mom and dad split up, I was on the road. Randy Tyler at Dothan, Alabama TV taping. I was sitting on the edge of the ring before the people got in there. I was 13 years old and I was already I kind of had a clue of what was going on in the business. And he reached down, grabbed me by the hair and pulled me in the ring and had a 10-minute match with me. It was before and he jumped out of the ring. My dad come looking for me. He jumped out of the ring and he looked at my dad and he said, the kid's a natural. Well, I knew I wanted to be a wrestler. That was my aspirations and those were my dreams. And then when I was 17 on April 1st, I go to the hospital because I have to have my tonsils taken out because I would get a bad throat infection once a year. So they decided they were going to take my tonsils out on April the 2nd. Well, they did, but the anesthesiologist messed up and I flatlined. They nicked my pharynx. They filled my chest cavity up with gas. I had a massive heart attack and I flatlined. I was gone for 2 minutes. Wow. I had an incredible journey. I know there's an afterlife, and I know there's a creator and I know I'm part of something a whole lot bigger. And I didn't jump on this fast enough. It was one of those life lessons. It was another thing I got through, but I didn't eat food from April the 2nd until August 13th that year. I went from 230 pounds to 128 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
So I get out of the hospital because I was going to make the Superdome extravaganza. So I got out of the hospital the day before. Somebody just sent me some pictures of it the other day, and oh my God, I was a skeleton. It was even worse than when I first started wrestling. Anyway, I took my time. It took me a year to gain my weight back. I took my GED. I graduated early. I gained my weight back up, and I got in the ring, and I worked out with George Weingroff. And I'm talking about he's stretching me and everything else. And he tried to put me out, but I kept coming back. Then we worked out one more time the next week. And, he was giving me, everything he had, and he couldn't put me out, couldn't make me quit, and couldn't make me give up. I told my dad, I said, I'm ready to get started. And my dad told me, and he said, no, son, I've already lost you once. I'm not going to lose you again. Well, when he told me that, I was like, well, he's not going to let me, follow my dream. I talked to Dusty Rhodes in New Orleans one night. Because in 1969, a lot of people don't know this, but Dusty Rhodes was on his way I guess from Minneapolis back to Austin, Texas, to give it up and go back to plumbing. And he was coming through to wrestle my dad in the Sportatorium, pick up another booking, on his way home. And my dad felt something in the ring with him that night, put him over. And Dusty got his big break with Fritz. Because when Dad came back to the dressing room, Fritz was at the door. And Fritz said, I saw it too. He wasn't mad. And then my dad launched Dusty's career.
Was Dusty already cutting promos back then?
He was doing stuff, but he wasn't doing a whole lot of stuff. He was Dirty Dusty Rhodes and stuff.
Right.
He didn't become the American Dream until 1972.
Yeah.
So, but to get back to that, so I talked to Dusty one night in New Orleans, and Dusty returned the favor of my dad breaking him in by giving me a shot. And he brought me in underneath in the whole 9 yards, but I excelled, and I was on the road with some great guys. I was just with Mike Rotundo yesterday, but I knew all the guys before because, I started setting up the rings for Bill Watts when I was 15 years old. I was always on the road with the guys, So I had a little bit different, a lot different, a lot harder road to hoe, So anyway, I ran away from home. I didn't want to wrestle under my name because I didn't want anything given to me because it was going on in other territories, and I didn't want that. I wanted to, make my own name.
Right.
So Dusty gave me the name Michael Sam Houston from Waco, Texas, and I started wrestling. And after about a month or so, everybody just kept calling me Sam, and it was that, then on. And then got to wrestle down there for 3 months down in Florida. And, and I was around some great guys. Hector Guerrero gave me the best advice ever. He said, Sam, don't ever be second best. He said, you're a second generation. Mike Rotundo and Mike Davis and those guys started trying to blow ribs on me. Well, I made them rue the day.
Well, I'm a sucker for a good rib story, so maybe at the end we could talk about some ribs that you're involved in.
Sure, I got some good ones, dude. So anyway, I wrestled for Dusty down there in Florida for 3 months, and then he sent me to the Carolinas. And at the time in the Carolinas, you had 7 bookers. And I knew the business from the inside, from the office standpoint. I dealt with Ernie Ladd, Buck Robley, all these people, all these bookers and this, that, and the other. I dealt with Bill Watts. I'd already seen all that. I knew what was going on in the business. So when Dusty would come up to the Carolinas and work for Crockett, I'd, fill him in on this. Yeah, 7 bookers. It was insane. And everybody's fighting for what talent, instead of trying to work together. And so the business was not good. I was starving to death, If you're working 2 nights a week for $50 minimum guarantee, but you got to drive 600 miles round trip. The road condition, it was hard, So, you're doing all kinds of stuff. Well, anyway, Dusty came in and took over down here. And boy, I started working a little bit more and everything. And then something happened in Fayetteville. Tully hit me with Baby Doll's spike dog collar bracelet. The house was $6,000. The box office was. Put 27 stitches in my head. It took 4.5 hours to sew me up, blah, 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 blah. Dusty took me on TV the next night. I was ready to work. I'm going to work with Buddy Landell. And everybody's telling me not to do it. Well, I got to make money.
Yeah.
So I get out there, Dusty cut a promo. And then from there on, it was me, Dusty, and Magnum. Now, earlier, me and Magnum were real good friends because when Magnum started wrestling, Magnum was wrestling down in Florida, and Dusty sent Magnum to Louisiana, and it was Bill Watts and my dad that turned Magnum into the big star that, he was destined to be. And me and Magnum knew each other from there. So when Barry Windham, because he was the golden boy at the time, for here, he just signed the big contract and everything, and then him and Mike Rotundo took off. Well, that was on a Wednesday night in Raleigh. I was with Dusty when that happened. Dusty was coming up here. He was trying to get his contract signed with Jim Crockett because it was a big contract to take over the book. So Dusty would always ride with me. I had a 77 Buick Limited, and the office car was like a 79 or an 80 something Buick something else. But it was a nicer car, and so we would usually drive that. Well, Dusty come out of interviews and he's pissed off. He said, he said, I'm waiting on my contract. And he goes, and he didn't offer me my contract today. And he said, and he went out and he bought a brand new office car. So we're taking the office car to Raleigh. So it was a brand new stinking Mercedes. I think it was one of the 300 SELs. It was a convertible. It was red, black top, the whole 9 yards.
Back then that made you a made man.
Oh yeah, so I'm driving this Mercedes, man. So we drive to Raleigh and everything. We get to Raleigh. Dusty gets the news that Barry and Rotundo hadn't showed up. So I mean, and that broke the man's heart. Because he'd done a lot for those guys. And so I was there that night. I rode while I was driving, and when he didn't show up, I think I wrestled twice or maybe even 3 times. I don't remember. So I said, well, you want me to go do anything? He was getting ready to go to the ring. He goes, Sammy, go to the liquor store and get us, he said, get us a couple cases of beer. He goes, and make sure we get us a big bottle of Wild Turkey. So
if you will.
Yeah. There you go. Listen, my babies, and you're going to hear about the tales next month of Sam Houston and Dusty Rhodes, the great American dream. You see, we ride across the sky on the edge of a lightning bolt. Shedding lightning and fighting thunder, baby. Anyway, so I go get everything, and we're driving on the way back. And Dusty goes into this tirade. We pull over outside of Greensboro. We got to pee. And I'm over on the side where I'm getting ready to pee. And Dusty comes out of the car and he goes, F Jim Crockett. He goes, Sam, turn around and piss all over this thing. So we turned around, we peed all over that Mercedes. So
That's great. That's great.
So then, wait, no, it ain't over yet. It just gets better. So we get back to the office, park the Mercedes. I make the drive from Charlotte to Marshville. I lived with my grandparents in Marshville, Randy Travis's hometown at the time. And so I drive back to Marshville. The next morning, my grandmother wakes me up and she goes, honey, she says, Dusty's on the phone for you. And it's like 8:30 in the morning. I'm like, huh? So I go to the phone. He goes, Sam, he goes, get your ass to the office now. I said, what's going on? He said, just get here. I need you here quick. So I jump in my car. I don't even shower. I just wash my face up, throw my clothes on, jump in the car, and then to drive from Marshville back to Charlotte to the 421 Broadbent. So I get there to the office, and when I pull up, Dusty runs out of the side door of the office and throws me the keys to the Mercedes. And he goes, hey, baby. He goes, take this up to Taco Bell. There's a car wash chain called Auto Bell up here. But he goes, take this up to Taco Bell and get to work at the time now. And I was like, but Dusty, we just spent all night pissing on this car. Why do you want to do that? And he goes, baby, I just signed my contract. That car is mine. It's one of my perks on the side. Yeah, so I had to go do that. We had a blast with it.
Oh, you must have been heartbroken.
Well, hey, I can say I pissed on the Dreams car. No, it was I was uninvited to one of Flair's parties one time. Christmas party and stuff. And it was wild. I just got to tell you, I was a young kid and everything. So I'm trying to, I'm partying with big dogs because I'm not going to be left on the porch. I was a big drinker. I'm not proud of it, but I held my own and I drank many a people under a table. I mean, not many people can take a double shot of Jack Daniels, toss it back, gargle it for 10 seconds, and then swallow it. That's hardcore. I was hardcore. Anyway, so we're at a party, and I don't know, Jim Crockett just decided he didn't like me at that party, and this, that, and the other. So I stole his car. Yeah, I stole Jim Crockett's car and turned it back into the office. He had no way to leave Flair's party. I used to do one night. Okay, and this was before I started wrestling. And I just saw Teddy, and I told this story the other day. Teddy had turned on the Junkyard Dog, right? Yeah, in Mid-South. I was like 17. I worked at a gas station. I took care of all the guys' cars. This Black Bart tells interviews about it and stuff. Anyway, I took care of all the boys, and Teddy had a 1979 Smoking the Bandit Trans Am. So, yeah, I souped it up too, man. I fixed the carburetor, took this linkage off to where when you step on the four barrel, it wouldn't go, ooh, it wouldn't do that. It'd go, ooh, and it'd be gone. This thing could pass anything on the road but a gas station. So anyway, he had just won the North American title from Junkyard Dog. And this is at the Baton Rouge Centreplex, which is now the River Center. And it had been sold out. Junkyard Dog was the stuff in Louisiana. Anyway, so now Teddy's the most hated man in the thing. I got this record truck. I pulled over in the parking lot because, hey, I'm Grizzly Smith's son. I know everybody. I pick up Teddy's car with the record truck and I haul it off across the road. He comes out with 6 cops and the North American title and everything in his car. Oh, it was great. Yeah, I gave him a ride home and stuff like that. Yeah, I always had fun, but I got to relive some of that this weekend. And you know what was the coolest thing though this weekend in Fort Wayne was being able to touch people's lives in a way and to give them a memory and stuff. I got to talk history with a lot of people and stuff like that, and it was just great, and people that have been supporting my career and following me all this time. Hey, man, that's wonderful. People don't know a lot of stuff about me. I've been around the world like 8 times now. I was almost eaten by cannibals twice.
Let's hear that story.
Oh, okay. My first time I went to Australia was 1985. And Larry O'Day and Ron Miller were Ron Miller was the big Australian champion, and Larry O'Day was his tag team partner. But Larry was like sort of promoter. Well, they came in. Larry O'Day flew up to Atlanta to meet with WCW about doing a tour out there. I talked to Larry for a little while, and anyway, Larry ended up getting up with my dad later out of Texas. And there's an island north where they filmed all the Jurassic Park movies called New Guinea. We flew into Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. So we get there, and I was in a Tarzan movie. I mean, I swear. I go out on the street one day to smoke a cigarette, and here comes a guy walking down the street. He's about 5'4". They're a very small race of people, about 5'4", a dark skin, very dark skin. He comes up, he's got a bone in his nose, bones in his nipples. He's got vertebrae in his ears, like they do these gauge earrings now. I guess this is where it come from. I don't know. He's got a Tarzan loincloth on. He's got this great big hooked machete grass knife. He's carrying a spear like Kamala would have carried, except he had a stone head on it. And he had a bow and arrow over his shoulders, and he's walking straight up to me.
Did you think it was a wrestling gimmick?
Oh no, I knew right away because I'd already seen these. I'd seen, well, you know, all it was there. I mean, they had just found on the 17 tribes, new tribes of cannibals. They didn't know they existed.
Wow.
So anyway, we get over there. Well, anyway, he walks up to me, and I was like, wow. And then I'm expecting him to say, you know, something, you know, like that. And instead, he walks up and he goes, "Pardon me, mate. Could I bum a smoke?" And I'm like, wow, you talk better English than I do. So I give him a cigarette and I light it and I'm watching him and walk away. I cannot believe this. You know, I could not believe that this is different places in the world. I mean, I've seen it all now.
Yeah.
So I think. And I turn back around and here comes a woman walking down the same path. She's got like a waist wrap on, tied around her waist, and she's nursing a baby on one breast. And my hand to God, y'all, she was nursing a piglet on the other.
Wow.
What a visual.
Yeah. You know, so anyway, we're at this autograph session on Saturday morning before one of the big events. And they got me in this little, I don't know, 6x6 ring they got built to make it look like a ring with ropes on it. So I'm signing autographs. Well, after about an hour and a half, you know, I'd been drinking a lot of Crown Royal the night before, so I needed to go to the restroom, need something to drink. So as I'm coming back from getting something to drink, the people pick me up over their head, and they carry me all the way out to the front gates of the sports arena. And this is all wrought iron fences. The Australian Army had to come out in all their vehicles. They start shooting people with rubber bullets. They're beating them in the head with clubs. These big Rottweilers are just snatching people and dragging them off. It was the most vicious, brutal thing I ever saw.
What incited this? What incited
They were going to eat me.
Wow.
They were carrying me away to eat me. When the major got me in the van, he goes, "Mate," he goes, "You ever watch Boogs Bunny?" And I went, "Boogs, Bugs Bunny? Yeah." He said, "You know the Ethiopian?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There was a big black pot in your future, mate. They were going to eat me because I'm a fighter. They view me as a warrior. They believe that it's their religion. If they eat me, then my spirit will live through them." It's kind of like Zorro and the Eye thing, you know?
Wow.
You know, yeah. I mean, and people don't think that these cultures and this kind of stuff exist. Sam Houston, the other white meat, you know?
Yeah.
So that night, we're in the ring in Port Moresby, and I got Killer Brooks in a headlock or something like that. And the tribal people, I guess, I don't, but that's what they were, tribes people, all with big long knives and spears, and it was oh God. Getting back from the dressing room was a fight. Or getting back to the dressing room was a fight. But anyway, everybody had to wrestle a singles match. There were only 4 of us there, so we'd wrestle a singles match each, and then we'd wrestle a tag match. And we're putting 40 minutes a match in. So Action Jackson, who I trained him, God, in the mid 80s. He's my tag team partner, and my normal tag team partner, Charlie Norris, is Killer Brooks's tag team. All right. So I got Killer Brooks in a headlock, and all of a sudden I see like thousands of people bust down the wrought iron fence, and about 100 yards of wrought iron fencing around the soccer field. And here they come, and they're charging on the field, and here comes the Army out. Boy, they're fighting, and all of a sudden I hear this pat, and then I didn't know what that was till later. I found out that was a shotgun pellets landing on the tin roof. So anyway, I reach out to tag AJ, and I said, I got to catch my breath. And he goes, no, stay in there. And I turned around and looked, and he had 1 foot on one side of the ring apron and 1 foot on the other side, and he's hiding behind the corner. And he said, hey, Sam, stay in there. You're a smaller target than me. And I said, well, the heck with this. I let Killer Brooks go, and I dove up underneath the ring because I've been in a bunch of riot situations already, So I get up underneath the ring. I'm sitting there, and I'm watching everything, and I could not believe the battle that ensued, But then 3 days later, me and Charlie, we were in some other village or town, and we go next door to what there would be a grocery store. They had one bottle of water. The water had to be flown in from Japan. So we're going to split the bottle of water. We hadn't been in there 3 minutes. 5,000 people showed up to swarm that place and were trying to get at us. So the Army had to get called out again. We were on the last flight leaving before they started their civil war with Australia, I guess. We were brought up. I didn't find this out till years later. But, New Guinea is such a fertile land. And then that's where all the Jurassic Park movies were made. Well, Australia is mainly desert. Well, Australia wants to lay claim to that land. So they have a cigarette company called Spear Cigarette Company, and they sponsored our trip. Now, Spear cigarettes probably out, I don't know, 8 inches long, really a lot of tobacco in it and everything. They use the old newspaper with the print and everything. They're killing those people off. That's a genocide. I never realized that till a few years later, and that's something that's part of my story that needs to get out there. They put us on these flatbed trucks and if you wanted to start a fight, throw one cigarette between two dudes, and they go to fight. They have a nut that grows on a tree over there. It's called beetle nut. And they take lime from the garden and a mustard plant. And they put it all in their mouth, and then they spit out the juice, which is a fluorescent red, and they eat the meat of the nut, and it gives them a cocaine high. So after the matches, Charlie Norris we'd go back to the hotel, and they'd always put us high up because the people would climb the walls. I've seen people run up coconut trees. So anyway, I know it can be done. I ain't doing it, but I know it can be done. Anyway, but we would get us a case of beer and go sit on our balcony, and you'd see these little villages, and they're like Gilligan's Island huts. And one guy would come out of this, little group of huts, and then one guy would come out of this little group of huts, and they'd get in the middle of there and start hacking each other to death with those long grass knives. If you lived to be 32 years old at the time that I was there, you were doing good. Life expectancy wasn't very big.
You're lucky.
Very freaking lucky.
Gosh, so much has happened. I mean, I've been through just about every natural disaster. A tornado hit my house in 78. My sister was kidnapped in 79. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about me. A lot of stuff is, I guess, going to come out on this dark side of the ring stuff and everything. I interviewed for it. I have look, if I don't like somebody, I don't like something. That's a personal thing with me and them. I'll tell you, I don't get along with them, or I don't see eye to eye with them, but I'm not going to sit there and trash talk nobody. Right. It doesn't do anybody any good. Who cares about my opinion? And that's kind of like I feel sometimes like, well, why should I even care what you think?
You're absolutely right.
I'm all about one thing. First, I'm a Christian.
Yep.
I'm a follower of Yeshua, the Messiah. I did not say the name Jesus Christ. Now, I know a lot of people, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Yeah, the name Jesus Christ was not in the St. King James Version of the Bible until like the 1680s. The letter J wasn't, a German monk didn't come up with that until the 1400s. So the name Jesus Christ is not the name above all names. The name above all names is his given name, which was Yeshua. He says in the word, I come in my Father's name. Exodus 3:15, Yahweh, our Almighty, tells Moses, when he says the great I am, and Moses says, what is your name? He said, my name is Yahweh, to be remembered for all generations. Now, biblical word was written by many people, and it was inspired by the Spirit. Then Yahweh had his name recorded in original text 6,828 times. All right. When Constantine came along, he started substituting Yahweh's name for things like Lord, which is not a godly name. It is a name. It's the name of Lord Baal, another so-called God. The name, and then capitalizing the word God. That's giving homage to the God Gad, Gad. So I do my studying and everything, but he tells Moses in 3:15, tell him Yahweh sent you. Okay, that's the Father's name. Well, and then the Son says, I came in my Father's name. And now Yahweh is Hebrew, and it means self-existing one. And Yeshua means Yah is salvation. So, I've done my study. I had a long talk yesterday with a Pentecostal preacher, and it just blew him away because people think, and I have been hit in the head with a lot of steel chairs. Think I'm just a dumb wrestler. I'm not. This is my eternal salvation I'm talking about, and your eternal salvation. I want to see you guys in heaven.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Amen to that. We'd love to see you there too.
Yeah, I want to help everybody. And the master made me the wrestler I was. He put me in all the places I am. Come on. I was almost eaten by cannibals twice. I opened up for The Who twice. I wrestled before the band The Who played at the Houston Astrodome and the Texas Stadium.
Wow, I didn't know that. I'm not going to hear that on Dark Side of the Ring.
No, I told them about the cannibals. They were like, oh, no, they want, I don't care. I want to give you the truth, and I want to enlighten, and I want to help.
Can we go back a little bit to your time in Mid-Atlantic? You fought for the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title, beat Crusher Khrushchev, Demolition Smash, Repo Man.
Barry Darso.
Yeah, for our listeners, people that don't know. You lost the title to Black Bart, and you had a pretty long feud with Black Bart, and we're
not allowed to wrestle each other in Maryland or Pennsylvania or match.
I guess there was I was going to ask you about the match at the Coliseum in Philadelphia. It was a pretty bloody match. I guess somebody almost shut down the show, and there was still a couple more matches left. What Black Bart said in an interview. What are your memories of that match?
Oh, we beat the hell out of each other every night, just about. The State Athletic Commission tried to stop us as we were going. We beat them up too. That happened in Baltimore, and it happened in Philadelphia. Both.
Did you pretty much wrestle the same bloody match, both cities?
Well, it was. We didn't have any set matches or anything like that. It wasn't. Nothing was set. You got in the ring and you worked. You wrestled. That's the name of the game. All this predetermined bull crap and everything else, that ain't wrestling. That's play acting. I'm not a play actor. I'm a wrestler. I feed off of the crowd, off of the people. I don't, I'm not trying to orchestrate anything. I'm out there having a competition and giving you the best show that I can possibly give you. So I don't set anything up, or never have. But if you look at my career, finishes didn't always go like they were supposed to. I won a lot of matches that way.
Right. So you get over to the king of predetermined, right? So you get to go over to the big time WWF. Did they have any plans to change who you were or change your character? Or were they like, let's just bring this guy in as he is and see if he can get over organically?
Oh, well, okay. They brought me in. I thought I was coming in there for, one thing and everything. And you get there and then you start settling in. The road agents pick their favorites, this, that, and the other. And then it becomes just a job instead of, something special. And that's kind of what happened when I first got up there. It was the greatest thing in the world because you're in the biggest company, blah, 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 blah. But after you're on the road and all the attitudes, this, that, and the other, yes, it was the greatest thing in the world. But I preferred WCW at the time. Too much politics, and then there was, alternate lifestyles. I guess that I just wasn't comfortable getting dressed a lot of times.
Have you ever met Vince McMahon? I mean, of course you
Oh
probably have.
yeah.
Is he really bigger than life when he walks into a room? There's really the sucks the air out of the room, or
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody takes notice and everything like that. That's like when I saw him, I got my daughter went down to an event, got her on an event in Fayetteville with that Adam Rose, and they were going to take a look at her and stuff. And they were so mad that she was my daughter because there's so many second generation girls out there.
yeah,
So, but anyway, yeah, I was coming out of the catering, and this was kind of like a boost to my ego. I come out of catering, and Vince and Triple H were walking by, and Vince was all huddled up, and I stuck my hand out, and Triple H grabbed it, and I said, "I'm Sam." He goes, "We know who you are," and they kept on walking, him and Vince. They got about 40 feet away from me, and Vince went, reared up, and he went, "Sam Houston." And he turned around and he did that Vince McMahon strut and the whole 9 yards, come over and talk to me for 15 minutes. Wouldn't let anybody interrupt us or anything, you know? And I mean, we had a great talk. And so when I got there, I was treated like royalty by all the boys and all the guys and stuff like that. It was, you know, it was great and what a boost to the ego. But then when Vince did that, like it did, you know, treated me like that, I mean, people were bowing down. Can we kiss your butt? You know, it's like, no, you know, I respect Vince. You know, I wish him all well and stuff like that. I mean, he's one of the best businessmen ever in this sport.
yeah.
He's taken this business to heights. And yeah, come on. I mean, the WWE or WWF was bigger than the NFL in 1987.
Right. It was very big. It was easy to get lost in translation there. There was, a lot of people that ended up coming in as big stars and ended up pretty much getting jobbed out,
Yeah. Well, and that's, you know, that's the nature of the beast. They use you up and then they toss you aside, you know? And the funny thing when you were talking about Barry Darsow a while ago, and this is really like, this means a lot to me because people always go, "Hey, what was, what was your best match?" I don't know. Because I wrestled with so many greats, man. I was in the ring with Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Mr. Perfect. I was in the ring with Eddie Gilbert. I was, Flair. Come on. Ole. I was in the ring with the top guy everywhere. Barry Darsow came up to me in Vegas after I got him out of prison because I did some time in prison for DWI. I got railroaded, but it's okay. I did my time and I took my time while I was there. I used it to better myself and to become a better human being for everybody. Like I've got 12 years and I haven't had a drink. You know, I'm a guy that used to drink 3 5 a day, and I did it all without AA, and I'm not down in AA or anything like that, but I made a promise to my creator. When my mom died 7 days after I got locked up, she died because alcohol had shut down her liver, and alcohol and over-the-counter medication, sleep aids like Tylenol and stuff like that. Works on her liver, shut her liver down, and she passed 7 days after they locked me up. They chained me and they took me to the chaplain. Your mom's dead. Boom. I was able to make arrangements to go to the funeral in chains, man, but I was there. That don't make you a man cry. I don't know what does. But the day they brought me back and put me on my cell, I dropped to my knees because I did not want ever my daughters to feel the pain that I was going through that time. And I dropped to my knees and I promised my maker, I promised my mother, and I promised my daughters I'd never drink again. And that's over almost 12 years ago.
Like, congratulations. It takes a lot of courage, and you're a better man.
Well, you got to draw a line in the dirt sometimes, guys. You draw a line, the old schoolyard thing, draw a line in the dirt, you stand across it. And if you're going to fight, you're going to fight with everything you got. I ain't laying down for nobody. I'm here to jump up in anybody's face, give them what for, or whatever. We've been given certain rights in life by our creator that people are trying to take away. I'm not for that. And damn it, when it comes to fighting, I ain't scared. I've been in some pretty bad things in prison, man. They shipped me out of because I was a professional wrestler. I was on Murderers Row in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for about 8 months. Then they shipped me to a maximum security disciplinary camp. This is for the worst of the worst, that have disciplinary issues with. Now, I had been a model inmate. I had been a trustee, everything else, but they sent me to the worst of the worst. You know, I had my run-ins. Thank God I never lost anything. You know, we're just building our studio in here now, and we're going to be start filming some stories and stuff. And I hope the people will tune in. And, you know, but I went through hell and back. You know, but I never went down neither.
You definitely have a heck of a story, man.
And I'm tired of people like I've been approached. Oh, well, we want to do this docu-series and we want to do this documentary and we want to do this. Well, when it all comes down, then nobody wants to do nothing. Well, I'm getting ready to do everything on my own, you know, because what I got to say isn't, I don't care about just my life. I'll tell you some great, interesting things and true things that have happened. And it'll blow your mind and you go, you know, and you have a blast. I got Andre the Giant stories like you wouldn't believe. I was there with him when I was a kid, you know, so I keep you entertained.
After the WWF, you went to WCW in 1991. Jim Herd was the boss at the time, I believe.
Yeah. I didn't have much dealings with Jim Herd. The only person I really dealt with, you know, I talked to my dad a lot because he was one of the road agents. I talked to Jim Barnett. And Jim Barnett was the one that offered me the contract. And my dad went back to the office, oh, that's too much money to give him. So I was like, well, heck with that. I got on a plane, went to LA. You know, well, before that, I wrestled for him on a nightly basis, and I was getting the contract, and it was for $3,000 a night. And at the time, I was working about 300 nights a year. So then I was wrestling one man gang in Roanoke, Virginia. And I don't know if it was gangs clubbing forearms or Kevin Sullivan with the tire iron that he hit me with, but it blew my C4, C5, and C6. I didn't know it that night. I knew I was hurt. The next morning, I woke up and I was partially paralyzed on the left side of my body. I couldn't move. Went to Dr. Joseph Aswanek, the same doctor that helped Magnum out. He told me it was going to cost $27,000 for the surgery. Nicola and I had split up a few months earlier. I didn't have anything, so I got papers signed by my dad and Magnum saying your services are no longer needed. So this doctor out in California, Dr. Irving Schaffner, he had a Thousand Oaks Medical Group. He started working on me every day, and he didn't charge me anything, you know. Great guy. And after 9 months working with me 7 days a week from 7:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, he got me on my feet. I was out in LA, and then the Northridge earthquake hit. And we lived in Calabasas, right outside of Malibu, and big, strong condos. But the earthquake hit at 4:27 in the morning, and that scared the bejesus out of me. Now, everything just, when your whole world is shaking and it ain't supposed to.
Yeah.
4:30 in the morning, yeah. So, big earthquake, and we got out of there. But I re-injured myself because those big doors, I was busting doors down to get neighbors out. And we got a bunch of our neighbors out and everything. Went up to Grass Valley for a couple of weeks, but I re-injured myself, and Dr. Schaffner worked on me again for another 6 months. He got me on my feet. I flew to Atlanta to go visit my dad, and I ran into Charlie Norris. My dad had to have emergency surgery and his stomach removed, and then one night on Saturday night, his incision opened up. He contracted staph infection, and it was like just a gusher coming out of his stomach when it opened up. I went that night. It was 2 in the morning. I went over. I found the doctor's house. Pulled him back. He showed me how to clean the wound. And we lived. We used to stay at the airport Ramada there in Atlanta, and I had a room there. But my dad had so I had them go in and make it hospital safe and clean. And then I took care of my dad for the next few months while I started training Charlie Norris. And after about 3 months, and we were working out 2 and 3 hours a day in the power plant. And he goes, you need to be back in there. And I told him, Charlie, my career's over. I've been hurt. And he goes, Sam, I'm 65 pounds heavier than you. I'm 3 inches taller than you. We're blowing everybody away. Everybody stops and watches us. He goes, I'm giving you everything I've got in the ring, and I can't do a damn thing with you. You need to do this. And I said, well, I would do it if maybe a tag situation. He said, man, you and Jake would be perfect. I said, I love Jake, but he'd throw me to the wolves. And he said, well, I'll be your partner. So we went to the office with that. And then they met Dustin, Charlie's tag team partner. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, so I went back to L.A. And then when Charlie's contract was over, Charlie came out to L.A. We did some stuff. Then we went through Minnesota, and then ended up in Texas. And then from Texas to Japan 5 times, New Guinea, Australia, all this neat stuff.
What company in Japan did you work for? Was it New Japan or All Japan?
No, it was SPWF. It was Yatsu's group. Yeah, it was cool. We had a blast there. It's like every time when you get to the third day, oh gosh, you get tired of all the bow. And then
was it the strong style in Japan? Like as today we know strong style?
Yeah, it was. And the one thing, the good thing about Charlie didn't have the wind that I had or anything like that, so I could stay with the guys as far as out wrestling them and stuff. I had this one little shoot with Teranishi. He'd been wrestling 30 years, and he decided he wanted to try, but then he found out I could wrestle really good. But we never knew if we were getting in the ring with a judo champion or this or that or the other. There was one guy, well, we called him Boxer Man. They let him, he wore boxing gloves, and that was his thing. You're trying to wrestle, and he's beating the snot out of you. I remember he was peppering Charlie up really good in the corner. And Charlie's 6'6" and 305 at the time. Charlie just reached out and grabbed that man by the face. Just grabbed him by the face and then grabbed the back of his head and slammed him. He didn't move no more.
All right, everyone, that is going to conclude our first episode of Double Axe Handle Smash podcast. We want to thank Sam Houston for his time.
We want to thank his manager, Will Knight. He definitely helped us out a lot in getting Sam for us.
Sure did. So stay tuned for episode 2 and find out who our next guest is going to be. Are you excited, John?
I'm very excited. I just can't contain it anymore.
Here we go.
I want to tell you, it's gonna be